Good morning. I figured I would film a different kind of video this week. It's gonna be a little bit more vlog style. It's a busy week. I don't have the time to sit down and like script and plan and film a full-on like design tips video. I've got some DIYs in the works, but they're not finished yet. So this week's kind of gonna be like a follow along with me. Please ignore this wallpaper situation. I went gung-ho taking down a lot of the wallpaper in our house about a year ago and then never finished. And I literally got halfway in this room and like that is where I stopped. You'll see this fixed at some point, but that's not a problem for today or this week. I've got some new clients that I am doing a presentation for. I also have an existing client that I've been working on a DIY for. That's something you will see very soon, but I've got to go and finish up the big DIY for that space. And I'm also building an ottoman and making some Roman shades for that same room. So I have to go get the fabric as well as some of the other supplies. And then also for that same project, I have some lamps that I bought on Prime Day that I have to return. But before I do any of that this week, today is Monday and I have a laser hair appointment in Frederick, Maryland. So I'm getting ready for that. I've got to make a 45-minute drive, but I figured after my laser hair appointment, there is a HomeGoods that is right there next to the clinic. And with it being midway through August, I figure HomeGoods is probably starting to put their fall decor out. And I want to go and look and see what they have. But first I have my appointment. This is my 6th appointment. No, I've had 6 so far. This is my 7th appointment and I'm having great results so far. I've always hated having facial hair. I get ingrowns so bad. And as you can see, my skin is very fair and it's very sensitive. So shaving is really irritating and really painful. I shave and like the next day it's like I didn't. It's always been so uncomfortable and I've always hated having it and I hate shaving. So I've been having it lasered off and it is working great so far. So I'm gonna finish getting ready and we're gonna go. So I hope you enjoy this video and I hope to give you some tips and insights along the way. By the way, my name is Corey and I would like to welcome you back to the Clater House. I'm now at the end of the week at the editing process of this video and I got a lot of content that I'm excited to share with you. However, it's a little bit much for one video. So this is going to be a HomeGoods shop with me talking about some fall home decor recommendations. And then I will make 2 other videos, one revolving around an upcoming DIY project that you're gonna see in the fall, and then another shop with me video, but at a couple of different stores. So now that I've held you up long enough, let's get right into this HomeGoods shop with me. We are in Frederick, Maryland. I just had a laser hair appointment, which is why you can see like all of this redness on my face. But there is a HomeGoods right next to the clinic that I go to. And since it is August, I know that they're starting to put out their fall stuff. And I wanted to go through and see what they've put out for fall and kind of talk about how I would decorate seasonally. I've been getting a lot of fall decorate with me's come across the algorithm on my YouTube and on Instagram and all of that. And I see a lot of things that I personally wouldn't do in my own home, not because they're bad or they're wrong or anything like that, but like I like to bring fall into my house without necessarily like the pumpkins or a sign that says fall or like the bright orange colors. I like to bring more of like the energy or like the feeling of fall, like the coziness, the idea of retreating back into your space and your home to start your season of wintering, rest and relaxation before you spring back into action when March and April comes around. So that's when I like to start creating that feeling rather than like the actual like fall decor. So I'm gonna go through and see what they have in regards to fall decor and talk about if it's something I would bring in and why, or why I would not maybe bring that in and what I would do instead for this season. So let's go in, we'll see if I buy anything and look at what HomeGoods has for fall. First up was the faux foliage section. I would honestly stay away from a lot of this. There is this one that's almost an exact replica of something at Pottery Barn, but I probably wouldn't buy it from either store, to be honest. I did, however, come across this one, which I liked because it was more so like a dried or preserved option. It was like actually at one point a living thing. And that's what I would go for more so in the fall, is like dried and preserved foliage, because that's what's happening in the fall is things are drying up, things are dying. And this was an actual real material in some actual fall colors, not something super plasticky and vibrant. But even this was a little bit too vibrant for my personal taste. But if I would have taken anything from the aisle home, it would have been this. I would definitely stay away from this Christmas at Halloween situation. All this will achieve for you is a lower balance in your bank account and a cluttered front door. With some of today's technology and the price of this wreath, I don't know why this artificial Christmas tree stem thing was even on here, but in general, would definitely recommend more of the dried and preserved, similar to these bunny tails that were up at the checkout counter, something in a much more muted color that represents actual plants is going to give you more of that fall feel than any of the other vibrant plastics that they had. And same thing is kind of the case when we turn to the other fall decor. This was most of their general fall stuff. The rest was centered around Halloween. But in this section, rather than the pumpkins that are like painted trying to look like a real pumpkin, but you can obviously tell are fake, or any of the super vibrant colored ones would not be my go-to. The upholstered ones are kind of nice, but I don't like the plasticky stems on the top of them. For me personally, my house isn't a pumpkin patch, so I don't need pumpkins all over my house to tell me that it's fall. But if I were to bring them in, I would highlight the fact that they're not real pumpkins and go for something a little bit more elevated, like some of these glass options. They look beautifully handmade. They often come in more muted colors. I think they're a little bit more modern. And since we're not actually bringing real pumpkins into our house, I don't think we need to make them look like real pumpkins. I think these are much more elevated. In addition to the glass, I think something metal like this acorn, it could sit on a stack of books or on a shelf and it could look more elevated. You know, it's representing an acorn and it's really beautiful, but it's not trying to directly mimic something real that everybody knows is not real. Another thing is the word signs. I know a lot of designers hate on the word signs. And for me personally, it's mainly because when you walk through your house, you're not looking at a sign and sitting there and reading it. Like, you want something visually stunning. And unfortunately, words don't grab your attention, so they just become clutter. Rather than have a sign in your house that tells people that you're thankful, just show gratitude for your guests when they come over, and then have something more fun with more personality on the wall. One place I think you can have a lot of fun around the holidays with is in your artwork. Find some fun digital prints on Etsy that you can print at Walmart. It'll cost you less than $10, and change out some of the pictures throughout your home in an artwork style that makes sense with your space, that is reminiscent of the fall season. I think that's one way you can have a lot of fun and inject a lot of personality without some of the clutter that word signs tend to bring. Since most of the rest of it was Halloween, I'm gonna briefly go over it. I don't really decorate for holiday specific, but if I were going to, let's talk about some swaps for some of these items in the Halloween section. First of all, this is just an absolute no all the way around. I saw a lot of these fake books And rather than those, I would go and get some actual vintage books at a thrift store, at an antique store. I think that's gonna give you more of the look that these books are trying to achieve. Something old and apothecary-like. These ones had storage in them, but you could layer some old books on top of a storage box and achieve the same function. With these busts, again, I would just use some real busts. A lot of people find human heads in general a little spooky, so I would just find some actual busts online or in the thrift store or even over in the regular home decor section and do something like that instead. I think those pieces are a little bit better quality and kind of achieve the same thing. Also, these fake witches brooms with the plastic handle and the fake signs attached, all of that, same thing. Just get a real broom. I think a real broom would be more functional than this plasticky situation, and it looks Halloween-y. So I would just use a real broom rather than spend your money on this. I also saw a couple of these cauldrons. Something that I think is a lot more effective of achieving that witchy apothecary vibe is going to like an antique store and finding, oftentimes they do have actual like cauldron looking things, but they also have some cast iron pots that I think achieve a more authentic look for what this is trying to mimic. Again, with the word signs, as fun as they are to read in the store, in your house, they just end up becoming clutter. I did come across these skull candles and I probably wouldn't buy them personally, but if anything in the section, this would probably be the extent of the items I would get from this section. In general, rather than looking at the specific fall section, I would turn to the rest of the store for my fall decor to bring that fall feeling in without the actual fall decor. Looking at the brightly colored and brightly patterned linens that typically don't fit in with anyone's color palette, I would stick away from all of the fall specific tablecloths, napkins, blankets, pillows, etc. And instead, I would focus on texture. I think texture is one way to bring in a cozy feeling in the fall, and oftentimes they fit into your style a lot better. They even have some patterned options in more of a muted fall palette that can be nice. But looking at their table linen section, I would look at like a neutral textured tablecloth with some neutral, more patterned napkins. Keep your woven chargers from like your spring and summer season, and then layer in a classic plate that just has a little bit of detail, like this one with the speckled brown edges. I think this gives that cozy feeling. And then you could get some napkin rings or some coasters or something that has acorns or pumpkins or something a little bit more fall touch that could be more easily stored. Whereas these are pieces you could use all year that still maintain that fall feeling. And you could even pair them with some glasses like this. Like the ribbing along the edge of this glass reminds me of the way a pumpkin grows. So again, it's like a little detail that's reminiscent of fall to you, but it doesn't scream pumpkin fall extravaganza. And then moving on to the pillow section, they had these that reminded me a lot of fall. They're flannel, so they've got a nice texture and they're in more of those muted fall patterns. You could layer them with something like this Killam rug inspired pillow to give a layered look with a new texture, mix it in with a neutral, something super patterned for those cozy vibes. But with your pillows, you can swap out and do different arrangements, play more with your textures and bring in those reds and oranges and yellows, but more in the muted tones rather than the bright oranges. Even bringing in a green, like a sage green, and mixing in like a leather. Like there's a lot of different textures and even some of your same green colors that you can play with in the fall time without the pumpkins and the ghosts and the skeletons. Turning to the regular decor, bringing in more of like an amber glass like this would be a good option. It's great to bring in those fall tones. And this one reminded me kind of like a pine cone. You could put florals in these, or you could leave it by itself or put a tea light in it. And it's reminiscent of like a fall item similar to the wine glasses without actually being shaped like a pine cone. This is something that maybe would not work all year, but would be fun in the fall time. Also bringing in like unglazed terracotta vases brings in another fall color. And then you can layer fall foliage coming out of the top of it to give more of an elevated fall feeling. This also large white vase, rather than put a pumpkin on your credenza, put a large textural vase like this and fill it with some foliage, or let it stand on its own next to a terracotta vase or something. I think both fall and winter time are a great time to bring in bowls. You can get some vase filler like pine cones or acorns, and at Christmas time you could use some chestnuts and fill the bowl with some fall items, but the decor piece itself you can use all year long. I loved the dark wood tone of this particular one. Also, this pedestal bowl gave a warm, handmade feeling and some beautiful brown tones. And same thing, you could either style it by itself or do the same thing and put some vase filler in the top of it to make it more fall specific. They also had this huge wooden bowl that I think could be nice sitting on the ground. It's a nice natural material. It feels dried out, which brings the fall feeling in. You could put more wood in it next to your fireplace. You could use it to put your shoes in by your front door. Some of those vintage books from the antique shop, you could style in here next to a chair. It was a great size and a great price. And then along the same vein as the busts that we were talking about, some of these little figurines, these human forms, rather than doing like a skeleton or something like that from the fall section, doing a little figurine like this, they're made more of like stone or plaster rather than plastic. And they could be used all year long if you're into that. I know not everyone is, but they give that human form. They can be kind of creepy. If you're not into the whole bust human figurine thing, they can kind of achieve the same look as those plastic skeletons. That was it for my HomeGoods fall shop with me. Now, if you and your home do any of the things that I said I personally wouldn't do, I'm not saying that those things are bad or wrong. It's just my personal preference. I've never walked into somebody's home that had pumpkins and word signs everywhere and been like, this just isn't it for me. No, those homes do feel cozy and they do feel authentic and they feel very fall. They just don't feel like me. They feel authentic to that person. So if that's you, please continue doing it. And when you finish your fall decorating, please DM me on Instagram some of your pictures. I would love to see how you put fall into your homes. I did get a few items from HomeGoods while I was there. However, I will be sharing those in a haul in my next video. Like I said, I broke the content from this week up into 3 videos. So the next one that you're gonna see is actually gonna be on Monday. It's gonna be a bonus video next week, and it's going to be a shop with me for a upcoming client project. So we're gonna go to a couple of other stores. I get a few more items from those stores, and then I'll do a haul at the end of all of the pieces that I got from this week. And the next Friday's video, I went to work on a client's DIY project and I majorly messed up. So if you want to learn from my mistakes, don't forget to come back for that one. I know this is a little bit different video, but I really enjoyed shooting this style of content. So if you enjoyed it too, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing if you have not. I will see you on Monday next week. And until then, I'm wishing you all my best.